Hey friend, my name is Darius and welcome to How to Start a Game Company That's Profitable and will financially support you, your family, and your team members' lives. If you're a game dev and you're starting a new game company, then here's what you're going to learn in this blog. Here's what you're going to learn in these videos. You're going to learn business strategies that you need to know if you want to build a successful game company that financially supports your life. You're also going to learn how to make a game that sells itself. So that way you're not wasting, time, energy, and money into marketing on a game that's probably not going to sell well or players won't buy. The idea is to build a catalog of games that will help you sustain your business not only now, but also into the future, into the long term. You're also going to learn how to build a fan base, build a community, so that way you have a huge fan base of players that are excited, to buy your game and to play your game on when you do eventually launch, and also keep those players so that they're ready and excited to, buy your next game. Also, you're going to learn how to finish game projects twice as fast. Because remember, when you start a game studio, you're no longer an employee. And unlike an employee, you can't just show up and expect money to, appear in your account. You're going to have to learn how to manage your productivity because you're going to be doing more than just game dev. You're going to have to figure out how to do it all. You're going to have to figure out how to not only be a game dev, but also a business leader and somebody who finds ways to make the business profitable. So don't be that game dev that, sits in the ivory tower and makes their game in isolation and makes a game that they want to make and hope that other players will want to play and buy the game too, right? Learn the business strategies and skills that will help your game studio grow, make some income, and become a leader in your market. And learn the business and marketing skills so that way your game studio supports you financially, supports your family, and supports your team members as well. So how do I know this works? Well, in 2002, I was probably in the same situation as you were, where I had a day job and I was bored. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to get out. I wasn't doing anything creative. I basically was a cog in a wheel, right? And basically I wanted to make stuff that people would love to use and love to have. So like I said, in 2002, I set out to see if I can support myself creatively doing art or web development or web design. My very first business idea in 2002 was a Adobe Flash webcomic. So me and my buddy, we used to draw a lot. So we thought maybe we can put a webcomic on the internet, and it failed. I mean, we had no idea how to get people to land on our website. We had no idea how to, drive traffic. So, we puttered out because we just didn't know how to get people coming to our website. So 2002, 2003, I had an idea where you can pay your fines online. So remember, this is, 2002, where online banking wasn't really that robust and you had to physically go into the city hall to pay your fines. So I thought I can make a website where I can collaborate with the city and make it easier for people to pay their fines online. Well, I mean, that didn't work either because, eventually, people could just pay their fines or whatever through their bank. And the city wasn't really interested because I was just a small, web developer. They had no idea. They're not going to, partner up with somebody, a no name, right? So that idea failed too. So after that, in around 2003, I decided I wanted to be a graphic designer. So basically doing, websites, ads, magazines, and corporate, annual reports and things like that. So during the day, I was a IT purchaser for a big oil and gas company in Calgary. And then at night I would come home and work on my, business idea. So for years I struggled. And like I said, I'd had a day job and then in the evening I'd worked on my graphic design company, but doesn't matter what I did, doesn't matter how much marketing I did. I never landed one customer. And that idea fizzled out and I never, made any money doing that. And looking back in 2003, the reason is because, everybody wanted to be a web designer, a web developer back, again, like I said, 2003, the competition was crazy high and the market was oversaturated. And basically the clients I wanted to get, they were already fulfilled, right? They were already getting their needs met from other companies. There's no way I was going to compete with the bigger graphic design companies that were already established and had way more money than me for marketing and branding and stuff like that. So this might sound familiar, right? Where, everybody today wants to be a game developer and the market is oversaturated and it's hard to find players. It's hard to find, grab players' attention because there's so many games a player can choose from, their options are, limitless basically. Anyway, after a lot of trial and error, after a lot of failing, after, 4 years of not getting or not making any money or finding any clients, I finally figured it out. So here's my breakthrough. So like I said, after 4 years of trial and error, after failure, I figured out that what I was offering was not what people wanted. And this is a very simple lesson, but it's really hard to learn. So let me explain what I mean. What I learned was that you need to find if there's a market first before you spend months or years on a product or an idea or a business idea, right? My thinking and my idea back then was like, well, this market is $1 million, right? If I could get only 1%, that's enough money to support me. But that thinking doesn't work. You can't, it's really hard to even just grab 1% of the market. And unfortunately, I see the same thing with game devs today. Basically, what they do is they make a game that they think that players want, but they don't really take the time to see if there is a market for it. Or worse, they see that there is a market, but the market is already oversaturated, and they think that they can maybe get 1% of that market, and that will help them, support them financially. But like I said, that doesn't work. And then when these game devs fail, when they release their game and no one buys their game, they, blame their marketing. They probably said that they didn't market it well enough, or they blame, the Steam algorithm, or they say that their game was way too niche and no one could find their game, right? So, but what they don't realize is that they went into the wrong market in the first place, and no amount of marketing or PR or branding or flashy trailers, none of that is going to help them get out of their situation. So then how do you make a game or a product that people will want, right? Well, after failing so many years, I finally learned that people are motivated to buy when they want to solve a problem. You see, people are more motivated to get rid of a problem than to go and gain a benefit. And don't think that, video games are any different, because people buy and play video games because games solve problems in people's lives. So that's why when you enter a highly competitive market, you're making a game where, there's a lot of games in that market, it's really hard to grab a person's attention. It's because that person is already getting their needs fulfilled from other games, right? It's really hard to convince somebody who is getting their needs met to play your game or try out your game when they have a whole handful of other games that are doing the same thing that your game is trying to do. Because you see, players are only motivated when their current game is no longer fulfilling their needs. So they set out to find new games that fulfill those needs in new and in different ways. Anyway, basically my breakthrough was when I learned how to match my talents with what was needed in the market. So let me show you exactly what I mean. And this is successful startup number 1. So like I said, from 2002 to 2004, all my ideas were flops and they didn't work because I was basically trying to compete in an oversaturated marketplace. And my ideas failed because in an oversaturated marketplace, there's so much competition that, the clients or the customers or the people have so much options that it's really hard to get attention. So for example, me trying to be a graphic designer in an oversaturated marketplace, it was really hard to do because there was so much competition that all those clients, their needs were already being fulfilled, already met from other, from the competition. So what I did was, instead of trying to compete in an oversaturated marketplace, I learned how to create my own market. So back in 2005, 2006, people were beginning to, scan their old slides and photos and negatives into digital. And after some research, going on to forums, like the photography forums, I learned that people had a lot of problems with the digital scans because they looked horrible. Basically, the scanner wasn't producing, high quality digital images. So in late 2005, I started a scanning company, but what I also did was I fixed those scans individually in Photoshop. So basically I found a niche that no other graphic designer was in. And more importantly, that niche had a huge need and a want that was no other, person was fulfilling. So matching my talents with, what people want and need, that's how I carved out my own little, market, my whole new market. And from doing that, that's how I landed the biggest organizations and businesses and agencies in Canada. I eventually got so big that I had 3 offices and I had a small team of people helping me, doing the scanning while I did most of the marketing and sales. So the biggest lesson I learned from that startup was positioning, product planning, and market research. I knew I couldn't compete with all those other graphic design companies, the ones that were already established. So I learned how to position my company and carve out a whole new category, a whole new market, so that way I didn't have to compete with any other graphic designers. And through market research, I learned what people wanted and what people needed, and I made a product or a service that matched what those people wanted and needed. Then in 2009, I started my second successful startup, where I basically made ebooks and video courses showing people how to scan and fix their own scans in Photoshop. So I use the same lessons, the same business skills and basic business strategies, like in positioning, product planning, and market research in this new startup. But this time, in this second startup, I learned how to build a community using email marketing. I had over 6,000 people on my email list, and 6,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but think about it. Say you had 6,000, newsletter followers, or you had 6,000 wish lists, or you had 6,000 people in your Discord. You don't need a lot of people to have a successful studio. What's more important is the quality of those followers, not the quantity. So then I took everything I learned from my first, startup and my second startup, and I applied it to my third startup, which was in 2019, where I did 2D and 3D world maps for indie game devs. As a hobby, I always drew. I always did 2D and 3D art, digital art. And then in 2019, I decided to turn that talent into income. And like I said before, thanks to market research, thanks to product planning, thanks to knowing how to build a community, thanks to, digital marketing and positioning, I learned how to find a niche that no other, artist was filling, but there was a demand for. And I found that, a lot of game devs or small game companies needed somebody to make their world maps. So this is all great for me, right? But how does my experience translate into helping you, build a company, build a game studio that's financially successful? So let me show you that next. So while I was doing 2D and 3D art or game maps for indie game devs, I talked to them a lot. I asked them a lot of questions. I kept hearing the same common problems, and that was they had trouble marketing, they had trouble, doing market research, they had trouble with productivity, and they just basically didn't know how to grow their game studio. And it's crazy because these game devs were so talented, right? They way better programmers than me, way better artists than me. They knew how to write a story. They knew how to, get the tone and feel of, the atmosphere of a game, even the small little indie games. They were highly talented. But when it came to, building or growing a company, they had no idea what to do. So basically their game dev talents weren't enough for them to, successfully, start a company or grow their game studio. And every game dev I talked to, it boiled down to two big fears. The first fear was that they would run out of money before they would finish their game. And their second big fear was that even if they did finish their game, they were worried that their game wouldn't sell enough and that their marketing wasn't good enough. So when talking to the game devs, they're telling me about all, their problems with marketing and, building a company. I kind of told them about my background, and I kind of gave them a little bit of business advice, in positioning, how to do market research, how to do some product planning. And that seemed to help them, at least give them the right direction. And I showed them how, I can take my creative pursuits, my creative ideas, and turn them into income, into a, business that, lasted me for over 17 years, right? So using that experience, I kind of gave them some, a little bit of action plans and some insights to help them grow their own company. So that gave me an idea, right? If I can help game devs with my own experience, what I want to do now is basically take everything I know and kind of organize it into a blog like this one right here and share it all for free and create, easy step-by-step action plans that are easy to implement and, get results right away. So after helping all those game devs and seeing some results, how I can help them, I decided, as I record this in 2023, I decided to make a website, a blog basically called How to Start a Game Company. And I created a little system I call How to Grow Your Game Studio. So if you're serious about creating a game studio that will survive in the long term, if you're serious about, building a catalog of highly marketable games, and if you're serious about having a game company that supports your life, then you need to know these 4 key elements. So the first key element is your company position. If you look around, most companies position themselves as market leaders. So for example, what comes to mind when I say these companies' names? Bethesda, From Software, Supergiant Games, or CD Projekt Red. If you look closely, you'll notice that each of these companies position themselves as leaders in their genre, in their market. Each company has their, their unique tone or personality or, business soul that is different from any other company. And you can see that in their games, right? Even though they might have different games, each game you can tell is made from Bethesda or FromSoft, right? In fact, some of these companies have made their own genres where a lot of game devs, just follow them and copy what they do. So the very first key element in building a successful game company that supports you financially is your company position. And basically your company position is where you have a catalog of games that you specialize in and that is uniquely different from any other, catalog of games from other companies. It's a way for you to differentiate yourself from the competition. In fact, your games are so different or so unique that you basically don't have competition. And the only competition you have are when, other game devs are copying what you're doing. And don't get me wrong, this isn't easy to pull off, but in this blog, I will show you techniques and step-by-step, tips and tricks to show you how to do this, how to position your company in a way that is unique and different from the other competition. So let's move on to key number 2, and that is your products. So before you can even position your company as a market leader and have a competitive advantage, you need products. And don't get me wrong, video games are products. Sure, they're fun, they're interesting, they're entertaining, but at the end of the day, they're just products. A video game is basically an IT informational technology, software or product that people buy. People buy games like they buy chairs or, sugar or oil changes. At the end of the day, it's just a product. And because games are fun and because they're entertaining and they're interesting, game devs are a little bit too casual when it comes to the business side of, selling and marketing their game. But if you want, thousands of people to buy your game, then you can't be casual about it, right? You deliberately have to set out and make games that are highly marketable. You deliberately have to set out to make games that people want to buy. And the only way to do that is to understand what your player wants and what your player needs. And like I said, because games are fun and they're entertaining, game devs forget that people buy and play games because they solve real human problems. Games are a way to escape daily life, and games are a way to solve problems with stress. And games help people who are dealing with real, physical and mental harm. And games give people, purpose that their day-to-day doesn't give them, right? So like I said, they are fun and they're entertaining, but the real reason people buy games is to solve a problem. You got to remember that people are more motivated to get rid of something than to gain something. And most buying decisions are made because people want to solve a problem instead of, getting a benefit. And games are no different. And depending on the game, each game solves a particular problem a person is having in their life. So if you can genuinely care about your players and want to learn more about who they are and why they want to play your game and want to learn, their wants and needs, then you're going to make a better product. In other words, if you can match your game with, player wants and needs, then you're going to basically make a game that sells itself. So remember, you need to deliberately do market research and product planning, because that way you'll find out the wants and needs of a player, and knowing that will help you, guide how you make your game. And I'm not saying be evil and, make a highly addictive game that, basically is full of microtransactions and sucks, every dime and nickel out of a player, as much as you can. What I'm saying is that you can't just sit there and make a game that, you think people will want to play and hope that, people will play and buy your game. So in this blog, I'll show you step-by-step techniques and give you action plans to help you make, highly marketable games that basically sell themselves. Okay, let's move on to key number 3, and that is your players. So before you have a successful business that basically dominates a market or carves out a new market for themselves, for yourself, then you need a catalog of highly marketable products or games, right? But before you have a highly marketable product or catalog of games, you need players. So the third key in this system is that you need to find players. And then when you do find the players, you need to keep them in a way that where you build up a following, build up a community. Because without a fan base, without a community, your chances of a successful launch is very low. And without a fan base or a community, your catalog of games will go unnoticed. So building a community of diehard fans is very important if you want a successful studio that will support you financially. And finding players is one thing, but then keeping players is more important, because these players that follow you will help you will support you now and into the future. So basically, when you launch your first game and they love it, they're going to follow you and support you on your next game. And this is how you build a business that can last for more than 1 year and then into 10 or 20 years, right? Okay, here's key number 4, and that is, let's go through the steps again. So before you have a business that is a market leader, before you have a catalog of highly marketable products or your games, and before you have a huge community of diehard fans that support you now and into the future, you need to work on you. So basically, you need to know how to manage your productivity and your time to juggle all of this. So one of the other big mistakes I see game devs do when they start a new game company is how they approach having a company. So what happens is there's, let's say, a very talented game designer or game developer, right? And they're working for a company, but they see that their company is making a lot of mistakes. They notice that they can do things a lot way better. So they set out on their own and see if they can do things way better on their own, right? So they start their own game studio. And the very first thing that they realize when they leave their job is that their paycheck isn't guaranteed. At the end of the month or, in the middle of the month, there is not going to be money coming into their bank account, because they're not an employee anymore, and there's no company that will just, give them money if they just show up, right? So they finally realize that it's they who have to, find a way to be profitable. It's them who's responsible for making the money now. And then they also realize that they're not just going to be sitting there coding and making art assets or designing levels. They realize that their job is not just game dev anymore. It's, marketing or sales or HR or managing or being a leader, and basically everything, all those activities that, will find ways to make your company profitable. So they basically have 2 realizations. And realization number 1 is that I'm in charge of the profits. Now I'm in charge of my own paycheck. And realization number 2 is that I'm in charge now of managing people. I'm in charge of the paperwork. I'm in charge of the finances, and I'm in charge of running the day-to-day operations. And this is a huge wake-up call to game devs, who were an employee and they jumped to, starting their own company. They now realize that they have to be twice as productive because now they aren't just doing game dev. They aren't just designing or developing. They also have a whole new schwack of, responsibilities. So don't be that game dev that fails because they don't realize that now they are in charge, of the paycheck. They're in charge of making the company profitable. And don't be that game dev that, just thinks that they can just sit and design and make games without doing those activities that lead to profits. So you got to learn how to optimize your time and be more productive because now you're not only doing game dev, but you're also running a studio. You're also running a business. So in this blog, you're going to learn how to optimize your time, how to be more productive in a way where you get, twice as much done in a day. So that way you can do game dev and that way you can still be a business person that, focuses on profits and finding out ways how to, pay yourself and, make some income. So if you learn these 4 simple things, your game company will grow in income and profits. Again, I call this system Grow Your Game Studio. And there's 4 basic key elements part of this system, right? And if you want a successful game company that supports you financially, then you need to know these 4 key elements. So here they are again. And the first one is your company. In order to compete in an oversaturated marketplace, you need to become a market leader. You can't follow what other, game companies are doing. You can't follow what other, games are doing. You need to find a way to position yourself so that way you're basically not in competition with them and basically you're all on your own and you have no competition. The second key is your products, your games, right? Most new games and most new game studios fail because they don't make any profits. And that's, a very simple math, right? But what's not so simple is why did this fail? Why don't you make profits? And the key to that failure, the cause to that failure is because they didn't learn or they didn't bother to finding out what people want or what people need. So if you want to avoid financial failure, you need to learn how to do market research. You need to learn how to do product planning in a way so you do learn what people want and what they need. And then taking that knowledge, you can match your game with what people want and what they need. And this is the recipe on how to make a game that sells itself. And number 3 is your players. The long-term survival of your game company depends on not only just finding players, but keeping them. Because keeping players means that they will support you not only now, but also into your future when you start making new games, right? Like I said, you don't want to just make one game and then putter out because you lost that fan base. Also, your fan base, your community will be your best marketing because there's no better marketing than word of mouth. If you can get those hardcore fans to talk about your game, to share your game with other players, then there's no other better marketing than that. And remember, you don't need a following of 1 million players, right? It's the quality of your fan base, not the quantity. The last element, the last important key of having a successful game company that supports you financially is basically you. Remember, you're not an employee anymore, and you can't just sit there and code and develop a game and expect money in your account at the middle of the month or at the end of the month. It's now your job to find out how to get that profit, how to get that income coming into your bank account. So because now you're not only just a game dev, but also, a business person, and you have to find ways to make your game or your studio profitable. How you manage your time and your productivity is now very important because you're going to have a lot more work to do. So the survival of your game company, the survival of your game studio depends on how productive you are in a day. So these 4 key elements, basically your company, your product, your players, and you are the 4 major things I'm going to talk about in this blog. I'll show you new insights and give you step-by-step action plans that you can use right away to help you solve, any immediate problems you have right now. So remember, my goal here is always in this blog is to help you build or start a successful game studio so that way you can support yourself, your family, and your team members' lives, right? And I want to help you have a company that survives in the long term. So basically that means you're going to have to need a catalog of games that are highly marketable, and you need to build a community so that way they support you not only now, but also into your future. And that's what I'll teach you in this blog. And what I will teach you will be very tangible, very concrete. I'm going to focus on, action plans, on things that help you solve your problems right away. There's no fluff, there's no theory. It's all action oriented. It'll be techniques that you can use right now to help you solve your immediate problem. So if you want a game studio that is a financial success, then here's your next step. I have a question for you. What is your biggest challenge? What's your biggest problem? What's your biggest frustration right now when it comes to, starting a game company? I would really like to know. So what I want you to do is send me an email to help@howtostartagamecompany.com. And in the subject, put free help. That way I know it's you, and that way I can help you faster. And in the body, tell me more about yourself. Tell me about what inspired you to start your game. But more importantly, tell me more about your frustrations, your challenges, your problems when it comes to trying to start a game company and trying to grow your game studio. I'll read your email and I'll listen to what you have to say, and I'll reply back with probably some more questions, and then I'll come up with some action plans to help you with your challenge right away. Like I said, I have over 17 years in building successful startups, and to have somebody, to look out on the outside and help you, fix your problems fast is probably very valuable. So you have nothing to lose. Send me that email. There's no cost, there's no expectations, there's no obligations, and I'll get back to you with some insights and some action plans to help you, solve whatever issue you're having right now. If that sounds good, then great. Looking forward to meeting you and helping you, start your game studio and help you grow your game studio into a successful company that, supports you in your life and your team members. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. My name is Darius, and good luck with your game dev journey. See you